Question 1. Assessment of the most effective strategy for securing sensitive customer data when introducing a new cloud-based collaboration platform, considering the potential for data exfiltration and the need to comply with data privacy regulations. Option A. Deploy the cloud platform first and then assess security needs based on observed data flow patterns. Option B. Implement only data encryption for data at rest and in transit, assuming DLP is an unnecessary additional layer. Option C. Implement a comprehensive data loss prevention (DLP) solution with content inspection and encryption for data at rest and in transit. Option D. Rely solely on enhanced user access controls and mandatory data handling training for all employees. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive data loss prevention (DLP) solution with content inspection and encryption for data at rest and in transit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for data accessibility for legitimate business functions with the imperative to protect sensitive information from unauthorized disclosure or loss. The introduction of a new cloud-based collaboration tool, while offering efficiency gains, inherently increases the attack surface and the risk of data exfiltration. The CyberOps associate must make a critical decision regarding the implementation of data security controls, considering both technical feasibility and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in selecting the most effective and compliant strategy without hindering essential business operations. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a comprehensive data loss prevention (DLP) solution that includes content inspection, endpoint monitoring, and network traffic analysis, coupled with robust encryption for data both at rest and in transit, directly addresses the identified risks. This approach aligns with the principles of data security and privacy mandated by regulations like GDPR and CCPA, which require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data. DLP strategies are designed to prevent sensitive data from leaving the organization's control, while encryption ensures that even if data is intercepted, it remains unreadable. This layered security strategy is a best professional practice for safeguarding sensitive information in a cloud environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing only data encryption without a DLP strategy is insufficient. While encryption protects data if it's intercepted, it does not prevent unauthorized users from accessing or exfiltrating data that is already within the system and not encrypted at rest or in transit. This leaves a significant gap in preventing data loss. Furthermore, it may not fully satisfy the appropriate technical and organizational measures, requirement of data privacy regulations, if the organization cannot demonstrate active monitoring and prevention of data leakage. Focusing solely on user access controls and training, while important, is not enough. Human error or malicious intent can bypass even the strictest access controls. Without technical controls like DLP and encryption, sensitive data remains vulnerable to accidental or intentional disclosure. This approach fails to implement the proactive technical safeguards required by data privacy regulations to prevent data breaches. Adopting a wait-and-see approach after the tool is deployed is a critical failure. This reactive stance significantly increases the risk of a data breach occurring before any protective measures are in place. Data privacy regulations emphasize a proactive approach to security, requiring organizations to assess risks and implement controls before processing sensitive data. Delaying security implementation exposes the organization to severe regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying assets, sensitive data, threats, unauthorized access, exfiltration, vulnerabilities, new cloud tool, potential misconfigurations, and the potential impact of a breach. Based on this assessment, appropriate controls are selected, prioritizing those that offer the most comprehensive protection and meet regulatory requirements. In this case, a layered security approach combining DLP and encryption is the most robust and compliant solution. Professionals must also consider the principle of privacy by design and security by design, integrating security and privacy considerations from the outset of any new technology deployment. Question 2. Comparative studies suggest that during a critical cybersecurity incident, the immediate pressure to restore services can sometimes conflict with the need for thorough forensic investigation. considering the importance of preserving evidence for potential legal and regulatory compliance. Which of the following approaches best balances these competing demands? Option A. Prioritize capturing volatile memory and creating forensic images of affected systems before any significant system changes or analysis. Option B. Focus solely on restoring services to normal operations as quickly as possible, deferring any detailed investigation until after the crisis has passed. Option C. Immediately wipe and rebuild all affected systems to ensure a clean operational environment. Option D. Perform extensive system modifications and analysis directly on the live, compromised systems to quickly identify the root cause. The correct answer is C. Immediately wipe and rebuild all affected systems to ensure a clean operational environment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the immediate need for incident response with the long-term requirement for comprehensive forensic data preservation. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to actions that inadvertently compromise the integrity of evidence, making subsequent investigation and legal proceedings difficult or impossible. The challenge lies in making informed decisions under duress, adhering to established protocols, and understanding the implications of each action on both operational continuity and legal defensibility. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the establishment of a secure chain of custody. This aligns with best practices in digital forensics and incident response, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate data integrity and accountability. By first capturing volatile memory and then isolating affected systems without altering their state, the organization ensures that the most ephemeral evidence is secured and that the subsequent analysis is performed on a pristine, forensically sound copy. This methodical approach maximizes the chances of a successful investigation, attribution, and potential prosecution, while also fulfilling any implicit or explicit regulatory obligations regarding evidence handling and incident reporting. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that immediately wipes and rebuilds affected systems without prior forensic imaging or data preservation is professionally unacceptable. This action destroys critical evidence, including malware, attacker artifacts, and system configurations that could be vital for understanding the attack vector, scope, and impact. This failure to preserve evidence can violate regulatory requirements for incident investigation and reporting, and it undermines any potential legal recourse. Another incorrect approach involves performing extensive system modifications and analysis directly on the live, compromised systems before any forensic imaging. This can alter or destroy crucial evidence, such as timestamps, log files, and memory contents, rendering them unreliable for forensic analysis. Such actions would be considered a breach of professional duty in handling digital evidence and could lead to the inadmissibility of findings in legal proceedings, contravening the spirit of regulations that require diligent and accurate investigations. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on restoring services without any consideration for evidence preservation or forensic analysis is also professionally deficient. While service restoration is a critical objective, neglecting the forensic aspect leaves the organization vulnerable to repeat attacks and unable to learn from the incident. This oversight can have regulatory implications if the incident involves data breaches or compliance failures, as a thorough investigation is often a prerequisite for fulfilling reporting obligations and demonstrating due diligence. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response plan that includes clear steps for evidence preservation and forensic analysis. This plan should be developed and tested in advance, ensuring that all team members understand their roles and responsibilities. When an incident occurs, the immediate priority is to contain the threat and preserve evidence. This involves a risk assessment to determine the most critical data to preserve first, followed by systematic collection and documentation of all evidence, maintaining a strict chain of custody. Decisions should be guided by established forensic principles and any relevant legal or regulatory requirements, prioritizing actions that secure the most valuable evidence before it is lost or altered. Question 3. Process analysis reveals a critical vulnerability in a core customer-facing application that has led to a temporary service outage. The immediate pressure is to restore functionality as quickly as possible. Before deploying any fix, what is the most critical step to ensure a secure and effective resolution? Option A. Defer all remediation efforts until a complete system overhaul can be performed to avoid further disruption. Option B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to understand the potential business and technical consequences of the vulnerability and any proposed remediation. Option C. Focus solely on the technical exploit mechanism of the vulnerability to ensure the patch addresses the specific attack vector. Option D. Immediately deploy the first available patch from the vendor, prioritizing speed of service restoration. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to understand the potential business and technical consequences of the vulnerability and any proposed remediation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security principles, potentially exposing the organization to further attacks or regulatory noncompliance. A thorough impact assessment is crucial to ensure that the chosen remediation strategy addresses the root cause of the outage without introducing new risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that quantifies the business and technical consequences of the identified vulnerability. This aligns with the principles of risk management, specifically the assessment phase, where the potential impact of a threat exploiting a vulnerability is evaluated. By understanding the potential damage, e.g., financial loss, reputational damage, regulatory fines, operational disruption, security teams can prioritize remediation efforts effectively. This approach supports the business continuity and disaster recovery objectives by ensuring that critical systems are protected and that recovery plans are informed by realistic risk assessments. It also adheres to the security principle of defense in depth by not just patching a symptom, but understanding the broader implications. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately applying a patch without understanding its full impact. This bypasses the critical risk assessment phase. Ethically, this could be seen as negligent if the patch itself introduces new vulnerabilities or instability, leading to further outages or data breaches. From a regulatory standpoint, failing to conduct a proper impact assessment before implementing changes can violate guidelines that mandate risk-based security practices and due diligence in system modifications. Another incorrect approach is to delay remediation indefinitely due to the perceived complexity or cost, without any interim mitigation. This directly violates the principle of proactive vulnerability management and can lead to significant security incidents. Regulatory frameworks often require organizations to address known vulnerabilities in a timely manner, and a failure to do so can result in penalties. Ethically, this demonstrates a disregard for the organization's security posture and the potential harm to stakeholders. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the technical aspects of the vulnerability, ignoring its potential business impact. This neglects the core purpose of cybersecurity, which is to protect business operations and assets. Such an approach can lead to misallocation of resources, where minor technical issues are prioritized over those with significant business consequences, potentially violating the spirit of security policies and procedures designed to safeguard the organization's interests. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework. This involves identifying the vulnerability, assessing its potential impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and then developing a mitigation strategy that considers both technical and business factors. The decision-making process should prioritize actions that reduce the most significant risks to the organization, ensuring compliance with relevant regulations and ethical obligations to protect data and maintain operational resilience. Question 4. To address the challenge of a sudden surge in network traffic that is impacting service availability, potentially indicating a DDoS or DDoS attack, what is the most appropriate initial course of action for a CyberOps associate? Option A. Initiate a detailed analysis of network traffic patterns and review system and firewall logs to identify the source and nature of the anomalous traffic. Option B. Immediately block all incoming traffic to the affected network segment to prevent further impact. Option C. Escalate the issue to senior management with a request for immediate guidance without performing any initial investigation. Option D. Disable the primary service experiencing the traffic surge to stop the attack. The correct answer is A. Initiate a detailed analysis of network traffic patterns and review system and firewall logs to identify the source and nature of the anomalous traffic. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a CyberOps associate to balance the immediate need for network access with the critical requirement of maintaining security and compliance. The challenge lies in understanding the implications of different network security controls and their impact on legitimate business operations, while also adhering to established security best practices and potential regulatory guidelines relevant to network operations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and controlled method for addressing a security incident. By initiating a network traffic analysis and log review, the CyberOps associate is gathering essential data to understand the nature and scope of the potential DDoS attack. This data-driven approach allows for informed decision-making regarding mitigation strategies, ensuring that any actions taken are targeted and effective, minimizing disruption to legitimate users and services. This aligns with the principle of incident response, which emphasizes containment, eradication, and recovery based on accurate assessment. An incorrect approach that involves immediately blocking all incoming traffic without proper analysis is professionally unacceptable. This is because it fails to distinguish between malicious and legitimate traffic, potentially disrupting critical business operations and causing significant financial or reputational damage. Such an action could also violate service-level agreements, SLAs, and demonstrate a lack of due diligence in understanding the root cause of the issue. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately escalating to senior management without any initial investigation, is also professionally unsound. While escalation is important, doing so without any preliminary data collection means that senior management will not have the necessary information to make informed decisions, leading to potentially inefficient or misdirected responses. This demonstrates a failure to apply foundational CyberOps skills in incident triage. A further incorrect approach, such as disabling the affected service entirely without understanding the attack vector, is also problematic. This is a blunt instrument that may stop the attack, but also halts legitimate business functions, which might be unnecessary if a more targeted mitigation exists. It represents a failure to apply the principle of least privilege and least impact in security response. The professional reasoning process for a CyberOps associate in such a situation should involve a structured incident response framework. This typically includes preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. In this specific scenario, the focus is on identification and containment. The associate should first attempt to identify the nature of the attack through traffic and log analysis. Based on this identification, they should then implement containment measures that are as precise as possible to minimize collateral damage. This involves understanding the capabilities of network devices like firewalls and IDS/IPS to filter malicious traffic or block specific sources, rather than broad, indiscriminate actions. Question 5. Compliance review shows that the organization is planning to deploy a new endpoint detection and response EDR solution across its entire network. What is the most prudent approach to ensure effective implementation and minimize operational disruption? Option A. Prioritize the deployment of the EDR agent to endpoints with the highest perceived security risk, ignoring less critical systems for the initial phase. Option B. Deploy the EDR agent to all endpoints simultaneously using default configurations to ensure immediate network-wide coverage. Option C. Implement the EDR solution only on servers and critical infrastructure, deferring deployment to user workstations until a later, unspecified date. Option D. Conduct a pilot deployment on a small, representative group of endpoints, gather feedback, and iteratively refine the configuration before a phased rollout to the rest of the network. Correct answer is B. Deploy the EDR agent to all endpoints simultaneously using default configurations to ensure immediate network-wide coverage. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a new security technology, an endpoint detection and response EDR solution, is being rolled out. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust security monitoring with potential operational impacts on end users and existing IT infrastructure. The organization must ensure the EDR deployment adheres to its internal security policies and any relevant regulatory requirements without causing undue disruption. The complexity arises from the need to configure the EDR effectively to detect threats, while minimizing false positives and ensuring compatibility with diverse endpoint configurations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment with thorough testing and user feedback. This methodology is best professional practice because it allows for the identification and remediation of issues in a controlled environment before a full-scale rollout. It minimizes the risk of widespread disruption and ensures that the EDR solution is tuned to the organization's specific threat landscape and operational needs. This approach aligns with the principle of least privilege and due diligence in security implementation, ensuring that security controls are effective and proportionate. From a regulatory perspective, a well-planned and tested deployment demonstrates a commitment to maintaining a secure environment, which is often a requirement for compliance frameworks that mandate risk management and incident response capabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying the EDR solution to all endpoints simultaneously without prior testing or a pilot phase is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and risk assessment, potentially leading to widespread operational disruption, data integrity issues, or even security gaps if the EDR is misconfigured. This approach disregards the principle of phased implementation and testing, which is crucial for managing complex technology rollouts. It could violate internal policies requiring change management and risk mitigation. Implementing the EDR solution with default configurations across all endpoints without any customization or tuning is also professionally unacceptable. Default settings may not be optimal for the organization's specific threat profile or operational environment, leading to either excessive false positives that overwhelm the security team or insufficient detection of actual threats. This failure to tailor security controls to the organization's unique risks is a breach of professional responsibility and could lead to non-compliance with regulations that require risk-based security measures. Focusing solely on the technical deployment of the EDR agent without considering user training or communication about the new security measures is another critical failure. This can lead to user resistance, accidental circumvention of security controls, or increased support tickets due to user confusion. Ethically, it fails to consider the human element in security, which is a vital component of a comprehensive security program. This oversight can undermine the effectiveness of the EDR solution and create an environment where users inadvertently compromise security. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach EDR implementation by first understanding the organization's security posture, threat landscape, and existing infrastructure. A pilot program with a representative sample of endpoints is essential to test functionality, performance, and compatibility. User feedback should be actively solicited and incorporated into the tuning process. A phased rollout, starting with less critical systems and gradually expanding, allows for continuous monitoring and adjustment. Communication and training for end users are paramount to ensure adoption and minimize disruption. This systematic approach ensures that security investments are effective, efficient, and compliant with relevant standards and regulations. Question 6. The control framework reveals that a US-based healthcare organization is migrating sensitive patient data to the cloud and must adhere to HIPAA regulations. Which cloud computing service model, when implemented with a business associate agreement (BA) and appropriate security configurations, best allows the organization to maintain the necessary granular control over security and data handling to ensure HIPAA compliance for protected health information (FI). Option A. Infrastructure as a Service (IaaS). Option B. Platform as a Service (PaaS). Option C. Software as a Service (SaaS). Option D. A hybrid cloud model that exclusively uses public cloud services. The correct answer is A. Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud security, balancing the agility and cost-effectiveness of cloud services with the stringent regulatory compliance requirements mandated by U.S. federal law, specifically the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for protected health information, FI. The organization is migrating sensitive data to a cloud environment, necessitating a thorough understanding of shared responsibility models and the specific security controls required to maintain HIPAA compliance. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying the appropriate cloud security model and the necessary controls to protect PHI in transit and at rest, while also ensuring the cloud provider's infrastructure meets the necessary security standards. Misinterpreting these requirements can lead to significant data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves selecting a cloud service model that allows for the greatest control over security configurations and data handling, which is Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS. With IaaS, the organization retains responsibility for the operating system, middleware, and applications, as well as the data. This level of control is crucial for implementing granular security measures necessary for HIPAA compliance, such as robust encryption for data at rest and in transit, strict access controls, and comprehensive logging and monitoring. The organization must also ensure the IaaS provider has a Business Associate Agreement, BA, in place, which is a legal contract required by HIPAA that outlines how the cloud provider will protect PHI. This approach directly addresses the regulatory mandate by enabling the organization to implement and manage the specific security safeguards required by HIPAA. Incorrect approach is analysis. Adopting a platform as a service, PaaS, model without careful consideration would be professionally unacceptable because while PaaS offers more abstraction than IaaS, the organization relinquishes control over the underlying operating system and some middleware. This can limit the ability to implement specific, granular security controls mandated by HIPAA for PHI, such as custom encryption algorithms or specific network segmentation. Regulatory failure lies in potentially ceding too much control to the provider, making it difficult to demonstrate full compliance with HIPAA technical safeguards. Choosing a software as a service, SaaS model, for sensitive PHI without a thorough audit of the provider's HIPAA compliance and a robust BAA would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. SaaS abstracts away almost all infrastructure and platform management, leaving the organization with limited visibility and control over how PHI is secured. While the SaaS provider is responsible for the security of the service itself, the organization remains ultimately accountable for the protection of PHI under HIPAA. Relying solely on the provider's assurances without due diligence and a clear contractual agreement, BA, is a direct violation of HIPAA requirements for safeguarding electronic PHI. Opting for a cloud security model that prioritizes ease of use and cost savings over granular control, without a specific focus on HIPAA requirements, would also be professionally unsound. This approach risks overlooking critical security configurations and compliance obligations. The ethical failure stems from prioritizing business convenience over the fundamental duty to protect sensitive patient data, which is a core tenet of healthcare regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing regulatory compliance and data protection above all else when dealing with sensitive data in the cloud. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements, e.g. HIPAA in the U.S. 2. Thoroughly evaluating cloud service models, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, based on the level of control required to meet those regulations. 3. Verifying that cloud providers have the necessary certifications and are willing to enter into required agreements, like a BAA. 4. Implementing a robust cloud security posture management strategy that includes continuous monitoring, access control, and data encryption. 5. Regularly auditing cloud environments to ensure ongoing compliance. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that a static application security testing, SAST, scan has identified a critical SQL injection vulnerability in the customer management module of a web application. The development team is currently under pressure to release a new feature set within the next 2 weeks. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately prioritize the remediation of the SQL injection vulnerability by implementing input validation and parameterized queries, and if necessary, adjust the feature release timeline. Option B. Schedule the remediation of the SQL injection vulnerability for the next major application release cycle, which is planned for 3 months from now. Option C. Address lower priority vulnerabilities identified in the SaaS scan first, as they are less complex to fix and can be completed within the current development sprint. Option D. Configure the web application firewall, WAF, to block known SQL injection patterns targeting the affected module as a temporary measure, while the development team focuses on the new features. The correct answer is A. Immediately prioritize the remediation of the SQL injection vulnerability by implementing input validation and parameterized queries, and if necessary, adjust the feature release timeline. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in application security, balancing rapid feature deployment with robust security controls. The pressure to release new functionalities quickly can lead to the overlooking or underestimation of security risks, particularly in the context of web application vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in advocating for and implementing security best practices without unduly hindering development velocity, requiring a deep understanding of both technical vulnerabilities and business needs. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses a critical vulnerability, SQL injection, identified through a recognized methodology, SAST, and prioritizes remediation based on risk. SQL injection is a severe threat that can lead to unauthorized data access, modification, or deletion, directly violating data privacy regulations and compromising the integrity of the application. Implementing input validation and parameterized queries, as suggested by SAST, is a fundamental secure coding practice that mitigates this risk effectively. This proactive approach aligns with the principles of Secure Development Lifecycle, SDLC, and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive data, which is a core ethical and regulatory expectation for cybersecurity professionals. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on patching the application firewall, WAF, without addressing the underlying code vulnerability is professionally unacceptable. While a WAF can offer a layer of defense, it is a reactive measure and not a permanent fix. Relying solely on a WAF can create a false sense of security, leaving the application vulnerable if the WAF is misconfigured, bypassed, or if new attack vectors emerge. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of security by design and can lead to regulatory noncompliance if a breach occurs due to the unaddressed code flaw, as it demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes fixing less severe vulnerabilities over critical ones like SQL injection is also professionally unsound. While addressing all vulnerabilities is important, the principle of risk-based prioritization dictates that the most critical threats should be tackled first. Ignoring a high-impact vulnerability like SQL injection in favor of low-risk issues can lead to significant data breaches and reputational damage, violating ethical obligations to protect the organization and its users. This demonstrates poor judgment in resource allocation and risk management. A final incorrect approach that suggests delaying the fix until the next major release cycle is highly problematic. This demonstrates a failure to understand the urgency and potential impact of a critical vulnerability like SQL injection. Such a delay exposes the application and its users to significant risk for an extended period, which is ethically irresponsible and likely to result in regulatory penalties if a breach occurs. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a clear understanding of the threat landscape, the potential impact of vulnerabilities, and the ability to communicate these risks effectively to stakeholders to secure timely remediation. Question 8. Consider a scenario where a financial services organization is undergoing a security audit and needs to strengthen its identity and access management (IAM) controls for administrative accounts that manage critical customer databases. The organization currently relies on complex password policies and periodic manual reviews of access logs. What is the most effective approach to enhance the security posture of these privileged accounts in alignment with common cybersecurity best practices and regulatory expectations? Option A. Grant standing administrative privileges to a wider group of IT personnel to ensure faster response times to system issues, while still maintaining strong password policies. Option B. Implement a privileged access management (PAM) solution that enforces just-in-time (JIT) access, session recording, and granular authorization for administrative tasks, coupled with multi-factor authentication for all privileged account logins. Option C. Focus solely on enhancing the security of the directory service by implementing stricter password policies and disabling legacy authentication protocols. Option D. Increase the complexity requirements for passwords, such as length, character types, and expiration frequency, and conduct more frequent manual reviews of access logs. The correct answer is B. Implement a privileged access management (PAM) solution that enforces just-in-time JIT access, session recording, and granular authorization for administrative tasks, coupled with multi-factor authentication for all privileged account logins. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity, balancing robust security with user accessibility and operational efficiency, all while adhering to regulatory mandates. The professional challenge lies in selecting an identity and access management (IAM) strategy that effectively mitigates risks associated with privileged accounts without hindering legitimate administrative tasks or violating compliance requirements. Careful judgment is required to avoid overrestriction, which can lead to workarounds and shadow IT, or unrestriction, which exposes critical systems to unauthorized access. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the inherent risks of privileged accounts by implementing a layered security model. This model typically involves just-in-time JIT access, session recording, and granular authorization, aligning with the principle of least privilege. From a regulatory perspective, this approach demonstrates a proactive stance towards data protection and system integrity, which is often a requirement for compliance frameworks like those implicitly tested in the Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate exam, which emphasizes practical security controls. An incorrect approach that relies solely on strong password policies for privileged accounts fails to acknowledge that even complex passwords can be compromised through phishing, credential stuffing, or insider threats. This oversight represents a significant regulatory failure, as many compliance standards mandate more than just password strength for high-risk accounts, often requiring multi-factor authentication and activity monitoring. Another incorrect approach, granting broad, standing administrative privileges, directly violates the principle of least privilege, a foundational security concept and a common regulatory expectation. This creates an unacceptable attack surface and increases the likelihood of accidental or malicious damage, leading to potential data breaches and noncompliance. A third incorrect approach, neglecting regular auditing of privileged access logs, means that unauthorized activities, if they occur, will go undetected, hindering incident response and post-incident forensics, which are critical for regulatory reporting and remediation. Professional reasoning in such situations should follow a risk-based approach. First, identify all privileged accounts and the systems they access. Second, assess the sensitivity of the data and systems controlled by these accounts. Third, evaluate existing IAM controls against industry best practices and relevant regulatory expectations. Fourth, implement controls that align with the principle of least privilege, such as JIT access, MFA, and robust auditing. Finally, establish a continuous monitoring and review process to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 9. The investigation demonstrates that a sophisticated phishing campaign led to the compromise of several user workstations, with evidence suggesting the exfiltration of sensitive customer data. The security team is under pressure to restore normal operations and prevent further data loss. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant incident response strategy? Option A. Prioritize the restoration of affected systems to a known good state from backups without conducting a thorough forensic analysis of the compromised systems. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive forensic imaging of all compromised workstations and network segments, followed by a detailed analysis to identify the attack vector, scope of data exfiltration, and persistence mechanisms before proceeding with eradication and recovery. Option C. Immediately disconnect all potentially affected workstations from the network and begin a full system wipe and re-imaging process to ensure eradication. Option D. Rely on antivirus scan results to identify and remove malware, then proceed with restoring affected systems to their previous configurations. Correct answer is C. Immediately disconnect all potentially affected workstations from the network and begin a full system wipe and re-imaging process to ensure eradication. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response where initial findings suggest a specific type of attack, but the full scope and impact are not immediately clear. The pressure to contain and eradicate the threat quickly can lead to premature conclusions, potentially missing crucial evidence or misdirecting resources. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of incident response with the need for thorough, evidence-based analysis, all while adhering to established cybersecurity frameworks and potential regulatory requirements for data breach notification or evidence preservation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic, evidence-driven process that aligns with best practices in incident response and forensic analysis. This involves meticulous data collection, preservation of evidence integrity, and a phased analysis to understand the root cause, impact, and propagation of the incident. This methodical approach ensures that containment and eradication efforts are targeted and effective, minimizing further damage and facilitating a comprehensive recovery. It also supports post-incident activities, such as lessons learned and reporting, by providing a solid foundation of factual data. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible security operations, which are implicitly expected in professional cybersecurity roles, and would be a cornerstone of any regulatory compliance framework requiring evidence of a robust incident response capability. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that focuses solely on immediate system restoration without a thorough analysis, risks reintroducing the threat or failing to address the underlying vulnerability. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance if sensitive data was compromised and proper investigation and notification procedures were not followed. It also fails to meet the ethical obligation to fully understand and mitigate security risks, an approach that prioritizes the removal of all potentially affected systems without proper forensic imaging and analysis compromises the integrity of evidence. This can hinder root cause analysis, prevent the identification of the full scope of the breach, make it impossible to meet legal or regulatory requirements for evidence preservation in potential future legal proceedings or audits. It also demonstrates a lack of professional diligence in forensic procedures. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or assumptions rather than verifiable data to guide containment and eradication is inherently flawed. This can lead to ineffective countermeasures, wasted resources, and a failure to fully address the incident. Professionally, this demonstrates a lack of critical thinking and adherence to established analytical methodologies, potentially leading to significant organizational and reputational damage, and failing to meet the standards of care expected in cybersecurity. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response methodology, such as the NIST Incident Response Lifecycle Preparation, Detection and Analysis, Containment, Eradication and Recovery. Post-incident activity. This framework provides a systematic approach to managing incidents, ensuring that all critical phases are addressed. Decision-making should be guided by the evidence collected, prioritizing data integrity and preservation. When in doubt, consult with subject matter experts and adhere to organizational policies and relevant legal/regulatory guidance. The goal is always to achieve a secure state while minimizing operational impact and fulfilling all compliance obligations. Question 10. Upon reviewing the security requirements for a new customer data management system, the security team has identified the need for robust data encryption. The system will handle personally identifiable information, PI, and financial transaction details, necessitating compliance with U.S. federal data protection regulations. The team is evaluating cryptographic options, considering both the strength of the encryption and its potential impact on system performance and user experience. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional cybersecurity practices and regulatory compliance for this scenario? Option A. Select the strongest available symmetric encryption algorithm, such as AES-256, and implement it with optimal configuration, prioritizing data integrity and confidentiality, while conducting performance testing to identify and mitigate any significant system slowdowns. Option B. Implement a widely known but older symmetric encryption algorithm like DES, as it is less computationally intensive and will ensure faster data processing, thus improving user experience. Option C. Utilize a hashing algorithm like MD5 for data encryption, as it is efficient and widely understood, ensuring that data cannot be easily tampered with. Option D. Choose an asymmetric encryption algorithm like RSA with a short key length for data encryption, as it offers a good balance between security and performance for general data protection. The correct answer is A. Select the strongest available symmetric encryption algorithm, such as AES-256, and implement it with optimal configuration, prioritizing data integrity and confidentiality, while conducting performance testing to identify and mitigate any significant system slowdowns. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for robust security with the practicalities of system performance and user accessibility. The organization is implementing a new system that requires strong data protection, but the chosen cryptographic method has known performance implications. The challenge lies in selecting a cryptographic approach that meets security requirements without unduly impacting the system's usability or incurring excessive operational costs, all while adhering to relevant U.S. cybersecurity regulations and best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment that considers the specific data being protected, the threat landscape, and the performance characteristics of different cryptographic algorithms. For sensitive data, strong encryption is paramount. While AES 256 offers superior security, its computational overhead must be evaluated against the system's capacity and acceptable latency. The best practice is to select an algorithm that provides an appropriate level of security for the data's classification and regulatory requirements, e.g., HIPAA for health data, PCI DSS for payment card data, and then to implement it efficiently. This might involve hardware acceleration, optimized implementations, or careful configuration. The decision should be documented, justified by the risk assessment, and aligned with the organization's security policies and compliance obligations under U.S. law. Incorrect approach is analysis. Choosing an algorithm solely based on its perceived strength without considering performance implications can lead to system unresponsiveness, user frustration, and potential workarounds that bypass security controls, thereby creating new vulnerabilities. Conversely, prioritizing performance over adequate security for sensitive data directly violates regulatory mandates like HIPAA or PCI DSS, which require specific security measures to protect sensitive information. Using an outdated or known weak algorithm like DES or MD5 for encryption or hashing, respectively, is a significant security and regulatory failure, as these are no longer considered secure against modern attacks and would not meet compliance standards for data protection. Implementing a strong algorithm without proper configuration or key management negates its security benefits and can lead to breaches, also resulting in regulatory noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying assets and data, understanding threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the impact of a compromise, and then determining appropriate controls. For cryptography, this means understanding the security guarantees of different algorithms, their performance characteristics, and the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the data being protected. The decision-making process should involve consulting security architecture documentation, compliance guidelines, and potentially performance testing. When in doubt, it is always better to err on the side of stronger security, provided it can be implemented practically and within budgetary constraints, and to document all decisions and their justifications thoroughly. Question 11. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual outbound network traffic originating from a user workstation, which deviates from established baseline activity. Option A. Initiate a detailed incident response investigation, including traffic analysis, endpoint forensics, and correlation with known threat intelligence, to assess the risk and determine the appropriate remediation steps in accordance with the organization's security policies and relevant compliance frameworks. Option B. Immediately block all outbound network traffic from the affected workstation to prevent potential data exfiltration without further investigation. Option C. Implement a new organization-wide firewall rule to block similar traffic patterns from all workstations without a specific investigation into the source or nature of the activity. Option D. Log the event for future review but take no immediate action, as the traffic pattern is not definitively malicious. The correct answer is A. Initiate a detailed incident response investigation, including traffic analysis, endpoint forensics, and correlation with known threat intelligence, to assess the risk and determine the appropriate remediation steps in accordance with the organization's security policies and relevant compliance frameworks. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for immediate threat response with the requirement to adhere to established security policies and compliance frameworks. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying the nature of the detected activity, assessing its risk, and determining the appropriate course of action without compromising security posture or violating regulatory mandates. Careful judgment is required to avoid overreacting to false positives or underreacting to genuine threats, both of which can have significant operational and compliance implications. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for incident response, directly aligning with the principles of security governance, risk, and compliance (GRC). Specifically, it involves a risk-based assessment that considers the potential impact and likelihood of the detected activity. This aligns with frameworks like NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, and ISO 27001, which emphasize risk management and continuous improvement. By following established incident response procedures, the organization ensures that actions taken are consistent, repeatable, and auditable, which is crucial for demonstrating compliance with regulations such as those that might be referenced in a U.S. context, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, or SOX for financial reporting, depending on the organization's sector. Furthermore, it reinforces the importance of security awareness training by prompting an investigation that might reveal gaps in user understanding or policy adherence. An incorrect approach that bypasses established procedures and directly escalates without proper assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure to follow a defined risk assessment methodology can lead to unnecessary disruption, resource misallocation, and potential damage to systems or data if the initial assessment is flawed. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can undermine trust in the security team's ability to manage incidents effectively. From a compliance perspective, it creates an audit trail deficiency, making it difficult to prove that incidents were handled according to policy and regulatory requirements. Another incorrect approach that involves ignoring the alert due to its perceived low severity without any form of documented risk assessment is equally problematic. This represents a failure to adhere to the principle of assume breach and can lead to significant security incidents going undetected or unaddressed. It directly violates the spirit of risk management by making subjective judgments without objective analysis, which is a critical failure in GRC. This can result in non-compliance with regulations that mandate timely detection and response to security events. A third incorrect approach that involves immediately implementing a broad, restrictive policy change based on a single alert, without a thorough investigation or risk assessment, is also professionally unsound. This reactive measure can negatively impact legitimate business operations, create user frustration, and may not even address the root cause of the detected activity. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the iterative nature of risk management and policy development, which should be informed by data and analysis, not knee-jerk reactions. This approach can also lead to compliance issues if the new policy is overly burdensome or not properly documented and communicated. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the alert's context, followed by a structured risk assessment. This involves gathering information, analyzing the potential impact and likelihood, and then determining the appropriate response based on predefined incident response plans and policies. This process ensures that actions are proportionate, effective, and compliant. Question 12. Examination of the data shows a SIEM alert indicating a potential brute force login attempt against a critical server from an external IP address. The alert is flagged with a medium severity. However, the IP address is not currently listed on any major threat intelligence feeds as malicious. What is the most appropriate next step for the security analyst? Option A. Correlate the alert with endpoint logs on the critical server and network traffic logs to identify any successful logins or unusual activity originating from that IP address, and check internal vulnerability scan results for the server. Option B. Immediately initiate the full incident response protocol for a critical security breach and notify all stakeholders. Option C. Ignore the alert as the IP address is not on any threat intelligence feeds, suggesting it is likely a false positive. Option D. Escalate the alert to the highest severity level and engage an external incident response team for immediate investigation. The correct answer is A. Correlate the alert with endpoint logs on the critical server and network traffic logs to identify any successful logins or unusual activity originating from that IP address, and check internal vulnerability scan results for the server. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in security operations, distinguishing between a genuine, high-severity security incident and a potential false positive or a less critical event. The pressure to respond quickly to protect the organization's assets is balanced against the need to avoid unnecessary disruption and resource allocation. The ambiguity of the initial alert, coupled with the potential for significant impact, requires a methodical and informed approach to incident triage and validation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes validating the alert through correlation with other security data sources and threat intelligence. This aligns with best practices for security operations centers, SOC, and incident response frameworks, such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, which are foundational for many cybersecurity certifications. By cross-referencing the SIEM alert with endpoint logs, network traffic analysis, and known threat indicators, the analyst can build a more comprehensive picture of the event. This validation step is crucial for accurate incident classification, ensuring that resources are directed towards genuine threats and minimizing the impact of false positives. It also supports the principle of due diligence in security operations, demonstrating a reasoned and evidence-based response. Incorrect approaches analysis. Initiating a full incident response protocol immediately based solely on the SIEM alert without further validation is premature. This can lead to wasted resources, alert fatigue for the incident response team, and potential disruption to business operations if the alert is a false positive. Ethically, it represents an inefficient use of organizational resources. Ignoring the alert because it appears to be a common, low-impact event without proper investigation is also problematic. Even seemingly minor events can be indicators of a larger, more sophisticated attack or a precursor to a more significant incident. This approach fails to uphold the duty of care in protecting organizational assets and could violate internal security policies that mandate investigation of all alerts. Escalating the alert to the highest severity level and immediately engaging external incident response firms without internal validation is an overreaction. While swift action is sometimes necessary, this approach bypasses crucial internal analysis that could confirm the severity and scope of the incident, potentially leading to unnecessary costs and a lack of understanding of the actual threat. This could be seen as a failure in professional judgment and resource management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to alert triage. This begins with initial alert review, followed by validation using multiple data sources and threat intelligence. If validated as a genuine incident, the next steps involve classification, containment, eradication, and recovery, guided by the organization's incident response plan. This systematic process ensures that responses are proportionate to the threat, efficient, and defensible. Question 13. Performance analysis shows that the Security Operations Center, SOC, is experiencing a high volume of alerts, many of which are not directly actionable or relevant to the organization's specific threat landscape. The SOC team is struggling to keep pace with incident response due to this noise. Considering the organization's reliance on various threat intelligence sources, which approach would best enhance the SOC's effectiveness in identifying and mitigating actual threats while optimizing resource allocation? Option A. Increase the volume of commercial threat intelligence feeds subscribed to, assuming that more data will automatically lead to better detection and response capabilities. Option B. Focus solely on patching every identified vulnerability as soon as it is discovered, regardless of its exploitability or impact on critical business functions. Option C. Develop a system that automatically blocks any IP address or domain that appears on any open-source threat intelligence list, without further analysis or contextualization. Option D. Implement a robust threat modeling process that uses adversary TTPs derived from all available threat intelligence sources to identify potential attack paths against critical assets, and then prioritize vulnerability remediation and control implementation based on this risk assessment. The correct answer is D. Implement a robust threat modeling process that uses adversary TTPs derived from all available threat intelligence sources to identify potential attack paths against critical assets, and then prioritize vulnerability remediation and control implementation based on this risk assessment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the CyberOps associate to balance the immediate need for threat mitigation with the long-term strategic goal of improving the organization's security posture. The pressure to respond quickly to an active threat can lead to a reactive approach, potentially overlooking the root causes or systemic vulnerabilities that allow the threat to materialize. Effective threat intelligence integration is crucial, but its application must be systematic and aligned with organizational risk appetite and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in translating raw intelligence into actionable insights that inform both tactical responses and strategic improvements, all while adhering to the principles of responsible data handling and operational efficiency. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment that leverages threat intelligence to identify and prioritize vulnerabilities. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that security investments and remediation efforts are focused on the most significant threats and the most critical assets. By analyzing the adversary's TTPs derived from threat intelligence, the organization can proactively implement controls that are likely to be effective against current and emerging threats. This approach is also compliant with general cybersecurity best practices and frameworks that emphasize a risk-based methodology, ensuring that resources are allocated efficiently and effectively to reduce overall risk exposure. The focus on understanding the adversary's methods allows for more robust threat modeling and the development of tailored defenses, moving beyond a purely reactive stance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely relying on commercial threat intelligence feeds without internal validation or contextualization. This can lead to alert fatigue and misallocation of resources if the intelligence is not relevant to the organization's specific environment or risk profile. It fails to consider the unique internal threat landscape and may result in chasing noise rather than addressing genuine threats. Ethically, it could lead to unnecessary expenditure and a false sense of security. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize patching all discovered vulnerabilities immediately without a risk-based assessment. Vulnerability management is critical. An unprioritized approach can overwhelm security teams, divert resources from more critical tasks, and potentially introduce new risks through hasty changes. This reactive, fix-it-all mentality is inefficient and does not align with a strategic risk management framework. It also fails to consider the likelihood and impact of exploitation, which are key components of a sound risk assessment. A third incorrect approach is to focus exclusively on technical IOCs without understanding the underlying adversary TTPs. IOCs are valuable for detection, but without understanding the how and why behind their appearance, TTP, the organization remains vulnerable to variations of the same attack. This approach is akin to treating symptoms without diagnosing the disease, leading to a continuous cycle of detection and reinfection. It represents a failure to mature the threat intelligence program beyond basic indicators to a more strategic understanding of adversary behavior. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk assessment framework that integrates threat intelligence at multiple levels. This involves 1. Understanding the organization's critical assets and business processes. 2. Leveraging diverse threat intelligence sources, open source, commercial, internal, to identify relevant threats and adversary TTPs. 3. Conducting threat modeling to understand potential attack vectors and their impact on critical assets. 4. Prioritizing vulnerabilities and potential attack paths based on the likelihood and impact of exploitation, informed by threat intelligence. 5. Developing and implementing layered defenses, including proactive controls, detection mechanisms, and incident response plans, aligned with the risk assessment. 6. Continuously refining the threat intelligence program and risk assessment based on new intelligence and lessons learned from incidents. This systematic approach ensures that security efforts are aligned with business objectives, regulatory requirements, and the evolving threat landscape, promoting resilience and effective risk management. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that the incident response team is spending an excessive amount of time on malware analysis, impacting their overall throughput. To address this, the team is considering adopting new methodologies. Which of the following approaches would best balance efficiency with the thoroughness required for accurate threat identification and effective remediation? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive static analysis framework that prioritizes automated deobfuscation and code structure analysis, followed by targeted dynamic analysis of suspicious components identified during the static phase. Option B. Immediately initiating deep reverse engineering on all suspected malware samples to fully understand their intricate code logic and potential functionalities. Option C. Relying solely on advanced AI-powered sandboxing solutions that provide automated behavioral reports, minimizing manual intervention in the analysis process. Option D. Expanding the use of signature-based detection tools across all endpoints and network devices to quickly identify and quarantine known malware threats. Correct answer is A. Implementing a comprehensive static analysis framework that prioritizes automated deobfuscation and code structure analysis, followed by targeted dynamic analysis of suspicious components identified during the static phase. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a significant increase in the time taken to analyze and remediate malware incidents. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly impacts the organization's security posture and its ability to respond effectively to threats. The pressure to reduce analysis time must be balanced against the need for thoroughness and accuracy to prevent misidentification, missed threats, or ineffective remediation, which could lead to further compromise or regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate analysis techniques that are both efficient and effective. The correct approach involves a phased analysis strategy, beginning with static analysis to gather initial indicators of compromise IOC and understand the malware's basic structure and functionality without executing it. This is followed by dynamic analysis in a controlled sandbox environment to observe the malware's behavior in a simulated system. This methodical approach allows for a comprehensive understanding of the threat, minimizing the risk of false positives or negatives. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this thoroughness ensures that remediation efforts are based on accurate intelligence, fulfilling the professional obligation to protect organizational assets and data, and adhering to any incident response reporting requirements that mandate accurate threat characterization. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on automated sandbox reports without further manual investigation. While sandboxing is efficient, it can be bypassed by sophisticated malware, leading to incomplete or misleading analysis. This could result in a failure to identify critical malicious activities, thus violating the professional duty to provide a complete and accurate assessment. Ethically, this could be seen as negligence. Another incorrect approach is to immediately jump into reverse engineering without performing initial static and dynamic analysis. This is inefficient and time-consuming, potentially leading to a deep dive into irrelevant code if the malware's primary function is easily identifiable through simpler methods. It also increases the risk of overlooking crucial behavioral aspects that static analysis alone cannot reveal, potentially leading to inadequate remediation and a breach of professional responsibility. Finally, relying exclusively on signature-based detection for analysis is insufficient. Modern malware often employs polymorphic or metamorphic techniques, rendering signature-based methods ineffective. This would lead to a failure to detect novel threats, a direct contravention of the professional obligation to maintain a robust defense against evolving threats. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a layered and iterative analysis process. This involves understanding the organization's risk tolerance, available resources, and the criticality of the affected systems. The process should begin with the least intrusive and most efficient method, static analysis, progressing to more resource-intensive techniques, dynamic analysis, reverse engineering, as needed. Continuous learning and staying updated on emerging malware trends and analysis techniques are crucial. This ensures that the chosen methods are appropriate for the observed threat and align with best practices for incident response and digital forensics. Question 15. Analysis of a critical server breach reveals unusual network traffic and suspicious processes running. To effectively investigate the incident and preserve evidence, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate initial forensic step? Option A. Capture volatile data, such as network connections and running processes from memory, before making any changes to the system. Option B. Begin analyzing system logs directly on the live server to identify the source of the intrusion. Option C. Immediately shut down the affected server to prevent further compromise and data exfiltration. Option D. Acquire a forensic image of the server's hard drive before performing any other actions. The correct answer is C. Immediately shut down the affected server to prevent further compromise and data exfiltration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in digital forensics. balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to maintain the integrity of digital evidence. The pressure to quickly restore services and identify the root cause of a security breach can lead to hasty actions that compromise the admissibility and reliability of forensic findings. The professional challenge lies in adhering to established forensic principles and legal requirements even under duress, ensuring that any actions taken do not taint the evidence or violate privacy regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the acquisition and preservation of volatile data before any system changes are made. This aligns with best practices in digital forensics, particularly under frameworks like those implicitly expected for the Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate exam, which emphasizes adherence to established procedures for evidence handling. Volatile data, such as active network connections, running processes, and in-memory data, is transient and can be lost if the system is shut down or rebooted. Acquiring this data first, often through live memory acquisition or network traffic capture, provides a more complete picture of the incident's initial state. This meticulous approach ensures that the evidence is collected in a forensically sound manner, minimizing the risk of alteration and maximizing its potential for analysis and presentation in legal or disciplinary proceedings. This adheres to the principle of chain of custody and the need for evidence to be collected in a way that can be proven to be unaltered. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately shutting down the affected server to prevent further damage. While seemingly logical for containment, this action destroys volatile evidence residing in RAM and can alter file system timestamps, rendering crucial data inaccessible or unreliable. This violates the fundamental forensic principle of preserving the original state of the evidence as much as possible. Ethically, it could be seen as a failure to conduct a thorough investigation if critical evidence is lost due to premature system shutdown. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with immediate system restoration from a backup without first acquiring a forensic image of the compromised system. This overwrites the existing data, including potentially valuable forensic artifacts that could identify the attacker's methods, tools, and the extent of the compromise. This action would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure, as it actively destroys evidence that might be required for legal proceedings or internal investigations, potentially violating data protection regulations if sensitive information was exfiltrated. A third incorrect approach is to begin analyzing logs directly on the live system without creating a forensic image. This constitutes modifying the original evidence. Even reading files can change their access timestamps, which can be critical in establishing timelines. This practice is a direct contravention of forensic best practices and could lead to the evidence being deemed inadmissible in any formal investigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response plan that includes a clear forensic acquisition phase. This involves identifying critical systems, determining the type of data to be acquired, volatile vs. non-volatile, and employing appropriate tools and techniques to capture this data in a forensically sound manner. The decision-making process should always prioritize evidence preservation over immediate system remediation, unless the risk of further damage or data loss outweighs the forensic value of the transient data. Documentation of every step taken, including the rationale behind decisions, is paramount. Question 16. The audit findings indicate a significant delay in the remediation of identified vulnerabilities, leading to an increased attack surface and potential exposure to known exploits. Which of the following approaches best addresses this systemic issue within the vulnerability management program? Option A. Rely solely on automated vulnerability scanning tools to identify and report vulnerabilities, assuming that the tools will accurately flag all critical issues requiring immediate attention. Option B. Implement a risk-based prioritization framework for vulnerability remediation, focusing on critical and high-severity vulnerabilities first, and establish clear service-level agreements, SLAs, for patching based on vulnerability severity. Option C. Immediately halt all non-essential system updates and reallocate all IT resources to address every single vulnerability identified by the scanning tools, regardless of its severity or potential impact. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive penetration test to identify all potential vulnerabilities, and then wait for active exploitation of these vulnerabilities before initiating any remediation efforts. Correct answer is B. Implement a risk-based prioritization framework for vulnerability remediation, focusing on critical and high-severity vulnerabilities first, and establish clear service level agreements, SLAs, for patching based on vulnerability severity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The audit findings highlight a critical gap in the organization's vulnerability management program, specifically concerning the timely and effective remediation of identified vulnerabilities. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing security imperatives with operational constraints, resource limitations, and the need to maintain business continuity. A failure to address these findings promptly can lead to significant security incidents, data breaches, reputational damage, and potential regulatory penalties. The pressure to remediate quickly must be tempered by a systematic and prioritized approach to avoid introducing new risks or disrupting critical business functions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a structured and risk-based methodology for vulnerability management, aligning with best practices and regulatory expectations for cybersecurity. This involves a continuous cycle of identification, assessment, prioritization, and remediation. Prioritizing vulnerabilities based on their potential impact and exploitability ensures that the most critical risks are addressed first, optimizing resource allocation and minimizing the attack surface. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and reasonable security measures expected under general cybersecurity frameworks and potentially specific regulations if applicable to the organization's sector. Though for this exam, we focus on general best practices as per the CyberOps associate scope. Effective patch management, informed by vulnerability assessment, is a cornerstone of this process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach might involve a reactive, ad hoc remediation strategy that addresses vulnerabilities only when they are actively exploited or when a major incident occurs. This is a failure of proactive security management and can lead to significant damage before action is taken. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of commitment to protecting organizational assets and data. From a regulatory perspective, it could be seen as a failure to implement adequate security controls. Another incorrect approach could be to attempt to patch every identified vulnerability immediately without regard for severity, business impact, or testing. This patch everything mentality can lead to system instability, operational disruptions, and the introduction of new vulnerabilities through poorly tested patches. This approach is inefficient and can be counterproductive, failing to optimize resource utilization and potentially causing more harm than good. It neglects the crucial step of risk-based prioritization. A third incorrect approach might be to solely rely on automated scanning tools without a robust human oversight and validation process. While automated tools are essential for identification, they can generate false positives and miss context-specific risks. Without expert analysis and validation, remediation efforts might be misdirected, wasting resources and leaving critical vulnerabilities unaddressed. This demonstrates a lack of comprehensive vulnerability assessment methodology. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic, risk-based approach to vulnerability management. This involves 1. Establishing clear policies and procedures for vulnerability scanning, assessment, and remediation. 2. Implementing a robust vulnerability scanning program to identify potential weaknesses. 3. Conducting thorough vulnerability assessments to understand the context, exploitability, and potential impact of each finding. 4. Prioritizing vulnerabilities based on a defined risk matrix, considering factors like asset criticality, threat intelligence, and exploit availability. 5. Developing and executing a comprehensive patch management strategy that includes testing and rollback plans. 6. Implementing remediation strategies beyond patching, such as configuration hardening or compensating controls, when patching is not immediately feasible. 7. Continuously monitoring and re-evaluating the effectiveness of the vulnerability management program. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows that different business units within the organization handle data with varying levels of sensitivity and regulatory implications. A new initiative aims to enhance data security across the board. Which approach best balances security requirements with operational needs and regulatory compliance for data classification, DLP, and encryption? Option A. Mandate the highest level of encryption for all data stored and transmitted by every business unit, irrespective of its classification or regulatory impact. Option B. Prioritize the implementation of a robust data backup and recovery solution, as this is the most critical component for mitigating data loss. Option C. Develop a single, comprehensive DLP policy that applies uniformly to all departments, assuming all data handled is equally sensitive. Option D. Implement a tiered data classification system that informs the application of appropriate DLP policies and encryption methods based on data sensitivity and regulatory requirements for each business unit. Correct answer is D. Implement a tiered data classification system that informs the application of appropriate DLP policies and encryption methods based on data sensitivity and regulatory requirements for each business unit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for robust data security with the operational requirements of different business units. The challenge lies in understanding that a one-size-fits-all approach to data classification and DLP is often ineffective and can hinder productivity. The CyberOps associate must demonstrate an understanding of how to tailor security controls to the sensitivity of data and the specific risks faced by different departments, while also adhering to relevant data privacy regulations. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a tiered data classification system that aligns with the sensitivity of the data and the specific risks associated with each business unit is the best professional practice. This approach ensures that sensitive data receives the highest level of protection, e.g., strong encryption, strict access controls, while less sensitive data is protected appropriately without imposing undue burdens. This aligns with the principles of data governance and data privacy regulations like GDPR and CCPA, which emphasize proportionality and risk-based security measures. By classifying data, organizations can effectively implement DLP strategies, encryption, and backup/recovery plans that are tailored to the data's value and regulatory requirements, thereby minimizing the risk of data loss or breaches while maintaining operational efficiency. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a uniform, high-level encryption standard for all data, regardless of sensitivity, is an inefficient use of resources and can negatively impact performance. While encryption is crucial, applying it universally without considering data classification leads to unnecessary complexity and cost, and may not be the most effective use of security investments. This approach fails to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of data governance and risk management. Applying the same DLP policies to all departments without considering their specific data handling practices and the sensitivity of the data they process is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This can lead to either overrestriction, hindering legitimate business operations, or underprotection of sensitive information, increasing the risk of breaches and noncompliance with data privacy regulations. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the principle of least privilege and tailored security controls. Focusing solely on data backup and recovery without a robust data classification and DLP strategy is a reactive rather than proactive security posture. While backups are essential for recovery, they do not prevent data loss or unauthorized access in the first place. This approach neglects the preventative aspects of data security and data privacy, leaving the organization vulnerable to breaches and noncompliance with regulations that mandate data protection measures. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data security. This involves understanding the organization's data assets, classifying them based on sensitivity and regulatory requirements, and then implementing appropriate security controls, including DLP, encryption, and access management. Regular review and adaptation of these controls based on evolving threats and business needs are crucial. Decision-making should be guided by a thorough understanding of data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, and the organization's specific compliance obligations. Question 18. Research into the implementation of a security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) platform within a financial services organization operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks. What approach to risk assessment is most appropriate to ensure compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Evaluate the potential benefits and cost savings of SOAR automation, and only conduct a risk assessment if significant negative impacts are immediately apparent during initial testing. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the technical capabilities and features of the SOAR platform, assuming that vendor-provided security measures are sufficient. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts related to the SOAR platform and its automated playbooks, followed by a phased implementation with rigorous testing and validation of each playbook before full deployment. Option D. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the SOAR platform to immediately realize the benefits of automated incident response, with a plan to address any identified risks in subsequent phases. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts related to the SOAR platform and its automated playbooks, followed by a phased implementation with rigorous testing and validation of each playbook before full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the inherent risks of misconfiguration and potential for widespread impact. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate risk assessment methodology for evaluating the implementation of a SOAR platform, ensuring that the assessment is comprehensive, actionable, and aligned with organizational security objectives and regulatory expectations. The need for a structured and repeatable approach is paramount, especially when dealing with automated responses that can execute actions across multiple systems. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment that considers the potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts associated with the SOAR platform and its automated playbooks. This methodology typically includes identifying assets, threat actors, vulnerabilities, existing controls, and the likelihood and impact of potential security incidents. For a SOAR platform, this means analyzing the playbooks themselves for logic errors, insecure scripting, or overly broad permissions. It also involves assessing the platform's own security posture and its integration points. This approach aligns with best practices in cybersecurity risk management, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks that mandate a proactive and risk-based approach to security. For example, in the U.S., frameworks like NIST Cybersecurity Framework and specific regulations like those under HIPAA or PCI DSS emphasize identifying and mitigating risks. A thorough risk assessment ensures that automation is implemented in a controlled manner, minimizing the chance of unintended consequences and maximizing the effectiveness of incident response. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on the technical capabilities of the SOAR platform without a corresponding risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach neglects the potential for automation to amplify errors or create new attack vectors. For instance, a playbook with a flawed logic that automatically deletes critical data could lead to severe operational disruption and regulatory noncompliance. E.g., data retention requirements. Prioritizing speed of deployment over a thorough risk assessment is also professionally unacceptable. While agility is important, rushing the implementation of a powerful tool like SOAR without understanding its risks can lead to costly mistakes, security breaches, and reputational damage. This haste can violate regulatory requirements that mandate due diligence and adequate security controls before deploying new technologies. Evaluating only the potential benefits of automation without considering the associated risks is a flawed perspective. This narrow focus ignores the possibility of negative outcomes, such as false positives triggering disruptive automated actions, or the SOAR platform itself becoming a target for attackers seeking to manipulate automated responses. Such an oversight would fail to meet the due care and due diligence standards expected of cybersecurity professionals, potentially leading to regulatory penalties for inadequate risk management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk assessment framework such as those outlined by NIST or ISO 27005 when evaluating the implementation of SOAR platforms. This involves a phased approach. 1. Asset identification. Clearly define what needs protection. 2. Threat identification. Identify potential adversaries and their methods. 3. Vulnerability identification. Pinpoint weaknesses in the SOAR platform, playbooks, and integrations. 4. Risk analysis. Determine the likelihood and impact of identified threats exploiting vulnerabilities. 5. Risk evaluation. Prioritize risks based on their severity. 6. Risk treatment. Develop and implement strategies to mitigate, transfer, accept, or avoid risks. 7. Monitoring and review. Continuously assess the effectiveness of controls and update the risk assessment as the environment changes. This systematic process ensures that automation is implemented responsibly, aligning with organizational objectives and regulatory compliance. Question 19. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood, high impact risk associated with unauthorized access to customer data, a medium likelihood, high impact risk related to denial of service attacks on critical services, and a low likelihood, medium impact risk concerning insider data exfiltration. Which of the following mitigation strategies best aligns with a comprehensive risk management approach for this organization? Option A. Focus exclusively on encrypting all customer data at rest and in transit, as this addresses the highest impact risk. Option B. Deploy a firewall with basic logging capabilities and assume that existing security measures are sufficient for all identified risks. Option C. Implement multi-factor authentication for all administrative access, deploy intrusion detection and prevention systems, and conduct regular security awareness training for all employees. Option D. Invest heavily in advanced threat intelligence feeds to detect potential external attacks, ignoring internal threats. The correct answer is C. Implement multi-factor authentication for all administrative access, deploy intrusion detection and prevention systems, and conduct regular security awareness training for all employees. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the CyberOps associate to interpret a risk assessment output and translate it into actionable security controls, considering the organization's specific context and regulatory obligations. The risk matrix, while providing a visual representation of identified risks, necessitates a nuanced understanding of their potential impact and likelihood to prioritize mitigation efforts effectively. The associate must balance technical feasibility with business needs and compliance requirements. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified high-priority risks with appropriate, layered security controls. This aligns with the principles of defense in depth and the CIA triad, ensuring that confidentiality, integrity, and availability are protected. By selecting controls that are both effective and proportionate to the risk, the associate demonstrates sound risk management and adherence to security principles like the principle of least privilege. This proactive and systematic approach is crucial for maintaining a strong security posture and meeting regulatory expectations for due diligence in protecting sensitive data and systems. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the highest likelihood risks without considering their potential impact fails to adequately address the overall risk landscape. This could lead to under-resourcing mitigation for critical but less frequent threats, potentially violating regulatory requirements for comprehensive risk management and due diligence. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only the most severe impact risks, regardless of their likelihood, can lead to inefficient resource allocation. This might involve implementing expensive controls for risks that are highly unlikely to occur, diverting resources from more immediate threats, and potentially failing to meet the spirit of cost-effective risk mitigation expected by regulatory bodies. An approach that ignores the risk matrix entirely and implements generic security controls, while seemingly proactive, lacks the targeted effectiveness required for proper risk management. This can result in a security program that is not aligned with the organization's actual threat profile and vulnerabilities, leading to potential compliance gaps and an inability to demonstrate a reasoned approach to security investment, which is often a requirement in regulatory frameworks. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the risk assessment output, including the context of the organization's assets, threats, and vulnerabilities. This should be followed by an evaluation of potential mitigation strategies, considering their effectiveness, cost, and impact on business operations. The selection of controls should be prioritized based on the risk matrix, aligning with established security principles and regulatory requirements. Regular review and adaptation of the security strategy based on evolving threats and risk assessments are also critical components of professional decision-making in cybersecurity. Question 20. The monitoring system demonstrates a sudden spike in outbound traffic from a server that has not exhibited this behavior previously. Option A. Immediately isolate the server from the network to prevent potential data exfiltration. Option B. Escalate the alert to senior management for immediate decision-making on network-wide security policy changes. Option C. Ignore the spike as it might be a temporary network glitch or a legitimate, albeit unusual, application update. Option D. Correlate the traffic anomaly with other security logs, such as firewall and intrusion detection system alerts, and review server-specific logs for any unusual processes or connections. The correct answer is D. Correlate the traffic anomaly with other security logs, such as firewall and intrusion detection system alerts, and review server-specific logs for any unusual processes or connections. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, identifying and responding to potential threats based on anomalous network activity. The professional challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine security incidents requiring immediate action and benign deviations from normal behavior that could lead to alert fatigue and wasted resources. Careful judgment is required to balance security posture with operational efficiency. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves correlating the detected anomaly with other security events and contextual information. This aligns with best practices for incident response, emphasizing a systematic and evidence-based investigation. By examining logs from firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and endpoint security solutions, a more comprehensive picture emerges, allowing for accurate threat assessment. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of false positives and ensures that critical incidents are not overlooked, thereby upholding the organization's duty of care and compliance with general information security principles that underpin regulatory frameworks like those implied by the Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate exam, which focuses on operational security practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that immediately escalates the anomaly without further investigation is professionally unsound. This can lead to unnecessary disruption, resource misallocation, and a loss of credibility for the security team. It fails to adhere to the principle of due diligence in incident response, potentially violating internal policies and general expectations of responsible security operations. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the anomaly solely because it doesn't match a known threat signature. Modern threats often employ novel techniques that may not have predefined signatures. Ignoring such anomalies risks missing sophisticated attacks that bypass traditional signature-based detection, thereby failing to meet the organization's obligation to maintain a robust security posture and potentially contravening the spirit of regulations that mandate proactive threat detection and response. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the monitoring system's alert without considering the business impact or the affected systems is incomplete. Effective incident response requires understanding the potential consequences of a security event. Failing to consider this aspect can lead to misprioritization and inadequate containment, which could have significant operational and reputational repercussions, indirectly impacting compliance with broader data protection and business continuity mandates. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a tiered approach to alert triage. This involves initial detection, followed by contextualization and correlation with other data sources. If the correlated data suggests a potential incident, then escalation and further investigation are warranted. This process ensures that resources are focused on genuine threats, minimizes false positives, and aligns with the principles of effective incident management and continuous security improvement.